Morning, good afternoon, and good evening, ladies and gentlemen. First of all, I would like to introduce myself. My name is Maria Roseni Alvero. I'm the Special Trade Representative of the Department of Trade and Industry, currently posted in Toronto, Canada. I am pleased to welcome you to today's webinar entitled Philippine Business Environment Post-COVID-19. It was barely a month ago when the Foreign Trade Service offices of the Department of Trade and Industry in the Americas came together to talk about how we will continue our investment promotion initiatives and re-engage the business sectors in our respective posts towards directing attention to the Philippines. Towards this effort, we turned to our Board of Investments, an attached agency of the DTI, knowing that our partnership with them will be significant during this crisis, the scale of which we have never seen before, and moving forward. We believe in the power of gathering, a coming together in this new reality of doing things. Although we cannot see each other eye to eye, we hope that nevertheless, we can communicate with you through the wonder of internet technology how the Philippines will continue to sustain its economy, rebuild consumer confidence, and proceed with its unwavering commitment to ease doing business for foreign and domestic investors. No less than our Secretary of Trade and Industry is here with us today to present the new environment for business, the new set of incentives, as well as strategic sectors and priority projects that will be available. But before we proceed, I would like to remind you about our house rules, which was flashed earlier on your screen. We will have a question and answer portion of our program, and you can send in your questions as they occur to you in the Q&A box located at the bottom of your screen. No recording of any form will be allowed except that of the producers. And just to let you know, we are also live on the DTI Facebook account. To open our webinar today, I would like to acknowledge our three eminent ambassadors to the United States of America, Canada, and Mexico. His Excellency Jose Manuel Romualdez of the Philippine Embassy in Washington, D.C., Her Excellency Petronila Garcia of our Philippine Embassy in Ottawa, and His Excellency Ambassador Demetrio Tuason of our Embassy in Mexico City. Thank you, Your Excellencies, for agreeing to be with us today. We are all excited to hear from you. First, I would like to introduce His Excellency Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez. Ambassador Romualdez has assumed his position in Washington, D.C. 2 years ago. He is a well-respected diplomat and a stalwart of further strengthening the Philippines' long-standing relations with the United States. He has extensive experience as a media practitioner and business executive, having been the CEO of Stargate Media Corporation and publisher of People Asia magazine. His Excellency, Ambassador Jose Romualdez.
Thank you, Councilor Alvero, for that kind introduction. Well, allow me also to greet my good friend, Secretary Ramon Lopez. Very good to see you, but unfortunately not in person. Hopefully you'll be able to visit us in Washington, D.C. sometime next year. Let me also greet my dear colleagues, Ambassador Gerly Garcia in Ottawa and Ambassador Bolo Tuason in Mexico City. I would like to welcome all of you joining us tonight in this webinar, which we are streaming simultaneously in the United States, Canada, and Mexico. I hope you're all keeping healthy and safe, and it's good to be with all of you, even if this is just a virtual sitting or setting. With the events in the past couple of weeks, I know things have been particularly challenging here in the United States, and I hope that we will all will soon get through all of these difficult times. The past several months has changed the world as we know it, and as we slowly begin easing restrictions and reopening our economies, we all anticipate a lot of changes in how we conduct business here. Here in the United States, establishments are already slowly transitioning into what some call it the new economy. We are starting to see restaurants at limited capacities to ensure social distancing. Big box stores are now offering contactless purchases, and companies, even the federal government, giving its employees maximum flexibility to work at home. The Philippines, as you all know, has been the bright spot in our region for a number of years, but we have not been spared. In the first months of 2020, the Taal volcano eruption caused extensive damage to many of our economic zones in the area. The coronavirus landed in our shores, and the resulting enhancing community measures, which were necessary, grinding the economy to a halt. And in over 20 years, this is the first time that the Philippines is registering a negative or a very negative growth rate. Having said that, the Philippine government is keenly aware of what we need to do to get back in the game. For those of you who can recall, back in April, our Philippine Secretary of Finance held a webinar with the U.S. Chamber of Commerce where he spoke about our government's four pillars of the economy to respond to COVID-19. During that time, the embassy and our consulates were also working closely with U.S. companies in the Philippines to ensure that their operations were subjected to minimal disruptions while the quarantine measures were in place. Just last week, the decision was made to suspend the termination of the Visiting Forces Agreement, and this is a very positive development as it demonstrates what the alliance means for the Philippines and the United States. The VFA is a critical aspect of our relationship and will play a key role in the security of our nation, especially in the time of the pandemic and growing uncertainty in the regional and global area. The VFA also anchors the relationship, which should strengthen confidence in the Philippines from an economic perspective. It also shows the importance of our long-standing alliance with the United States. As U.S. companies begin to rethink its global strategies, I invite all of you to once again look at the Philippines. Tonight, we are honored to have with us the Secretary of the Department of Trade and Industry, Mr. Ramon Lopez. He will talk about what the Philippines has done to address the economic effects of COVID-19, but more importantly, what we are doing now to rebuild the business environment where your companies can thrive. He will speak more about the CREATE Bill, or the CREATE Bill, which aims to provide better fiscal incentives and other non-fiscal benefits that foreign investors can avail in the Philippines. He will also talk about what the Philippines can offer in areas of manufacturing, food processing, and of course, IT services and business process management, which I personally believe will be the driving force in our post-COVID-19 world. I don't want to get ahead of Secretary Lopez, but suffice to say that there are exciting times ahead for the Philippines, and we do hope that the United States will join us as we forge ahead in this new world. Thank you and good evening to all.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Romualdez, for that interesting update from Washington, D.C. and your opening remarks. Next, I would like to introduce my ambassador, Her Excellency Petronila Garcia. Ambassador Garcia is a career diplomat for nearly 40 years. She is the first woman to serve as ambassador to both Canada and Egypt with concurrent jurisdiction over Sudan, and she also previously served as ambassador to Israel. Ambassador Garcia holds a law degree and is a proud member of the distinguished organization called Mensa. You know the saying, many are called but few are chosen. Ladies and gentlemen, Her Excellency Ambassador Petronila Garcia.
Thank you very much, Nini, for that kind introduction. Secretary Ramon Lopez, Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez, Ambassador Wasson, distinguished leaders from the private sector across Canada, from coast to coast to coast, friends, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and I'm very pleased to be part of this webinar organized by the Department of Trade and Industry under the leadership of Secretary Lopez. The global COVID-19 pandemic forces all of us to adapt to these very difficult times by using available technologies that allow us to get in touch with each other despite great distances and wide time zones between us. As a global and trans-border threat, the pandemic has to be addressed through a well-coordinated response from the international community. I understand that this webinar will tackle the Philippine response and updates on the COVID-19 pandemic in the Philippines. The Philippines and Canada are facing their respective unique domestic challenges caused by this virus, and we hope that we could find ways to address these challenges to minimize the potential disruptions to the free movement of goods, services, and investment. Ambassador Romualdez has very rightly pointed out how strongly this virus has impacted all of us, our lives, and industry and trade. As an emerging economy, the Philippines offers fresh opportunities for Canada to expand commerce and investment into the Philippines and its neighboring Southeast Asian countries. We all look forward to announcements from Secretary Lopez on the many reasons why Canadian businesses should continue engaging and trading with their Philippine counterparts and invest in the Philippines. I should just like to mention that the Philippines and Canada enjoys more than 70 years of relations anchored strongly on the nearly 1 million strong Filipino diaspora here in Canada. The number three immigrant population, largest immigrant population in the country. I would just like to close by thanking everyone for inviting us to participate in this. And mabuhay kayong lahat.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Garcia. I would like to acknowledge the presence of 3 other ambassadors in the audience right now. Ambassador to Argentina, Her Excellency Linglingay Lacanlale. Ambassador to Brazil, Her Excellency Marichu Mauro. And Ambassador to Chile, Her Excellency Maria Teresita Daza. Last but not least, to represent Mexico and Latin America with his opening remarks, I would like to introduce His Excellency Ambassador Demetrio Tuason. Ambassador Tuason has served in Mexico for the past 2 years. He has been a lifelong industrialist, having contributed to the growing business of arms corps global defense and making the Philippines a prime exporting country in the arms and ammunition industry. He has relinquished his CEO position to his son, and he's now the chairman emeritus of this family enterprise. Ladies and gentlemen, His Excellency Ambassador Demetrio Tuason.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Good morning to those joining us from the Philippines. I wish to thank Department of Trade and Industry Secretary Ramon Lopez and DTI's network of Philippine Trade and Investment Centers in the Americas for organizing this webinar. In terms of trade, probably the United States is the largest, and then comes Canada. But in the third place is Mexico. So let me especially recognize first the presence of Undersecretary Seferino Rodolfo of the Board of Investments and my colleagues, Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez, US, Washington, DC, Ambassador Petronila Garcia in Ottawa, Canada, Ambassador Ichu Mauro in Brasilia, Ambassador Linglingay Lacanlale in Buenos Aires, who just hosted me there last January, and I was very happy, and Ambassador Tess Daza of Santiago, Chile. Muy buenas noches to our friends from the Mexican business community, especially our friends from COMCE, the Mexican Council of International Trade. We are especially proud that in this part of the world, the Philippines is both a source and destination of investments. While Mexican cement giant Cemex has been a constant presence in the development of Philippine infrastructure, companies like ICTSI, the Ayala Group, and Grupo Emperador have made the Philippines a contributor to the development of the logistics and manufacturing sectors of Mexico and Latin America. Let me also recognize the online presence of our Philippine honorary consuls, Consul Francisco Cue from Monterrey, Consul Silvana from Guatemala, Consul Mario de la O from Acapulco, Consul Enrique Portillo from El Salvador, and Tito Bedek Bonilla of Honduras. They are the ones who amplify and multiply our efforts in the promotion of Philippine trade and investments in Mexico and Central America. I look forward to this most informative session with Secretary Lopez as we all seek a way forward to a new normal for the Philippine economy and the rest of the world. I'm very enthusiastic with this webinar because it shows we are moving forward in reopening our economy. Maraming salamat, muchas gracias. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ambassadors, for such warm welcome. Now we turn to the main event. I am proud to introduce to you the Honorable Ramon M. Lopez, Secretary of the Philippine Department of Trade and Industry. Secretary Lopez's extensive government experience with the Presidential Management Staff, the DTI, the National Economic and Development Authority in his previous life provided him with a solid background on macroeconomic and industry development. This allowed him to adopt a holistic approach to trade and industry before he moved to the private sector and became a top executive of a major Philippine food and beverage conglomerate for over 23 years. As secretary, he chairs several institutions under the DTI, such as the Board of Investments, the Intellectual Property Office of the Philippines, the Small Business Corporation, and the Philippine Economic Zone Authority. Secretary Lopez is a senior member of President Duterte's economic team and a key player in the Interagency Task Force on Infectious Diseases. He is one of those particularly responsible for the crafting of the newly enacted law, Bayanihan to Heal as One Act, granting the President additional authority to carry out urgent measures to meet the current national emergency related to COVID-19. The term bayanihan is a Filipino word for communal work. Ladies and gentlemen, I know that you are all eager to hear our main speaker. Let us welcome the Honorable Ramon Lopez.
Good morning and good afternoon and good evening, everyone. It's an honor to be with you today. Thank you, Special Trade Representative Nini Alvero. A special and warm greetings to Ambassador Jose Manuel Romualdez, Ambassador Petronila Garcia, and Ambassador Demetria Tuazon, as well as Ambassadors Lacanlale, Mauro Daza, and all the members of the Diplomatic Corps. Let me just greet also our DTI, Department of Trade and Industry family, the family of the Special Trade Representatives and Commercial Counselors, fellow workers in government, dear ladies and gentlemen in this forum. It's really an honor to be with you this morning. It's really different times. We're experiencing this pandemic, at least in our time, for the first time of this gravity. But allow me to present to you the Trade and Industry Situationer and Plan that will really spell out where we are and spell out also where we are heading. Next chart, please. it's not just it's not ago. It's just about 3 months ago, 3 to 4 months ago, when our country has been really on a very fast growth momentum. In fact, we ended the 2019 at 6%, the second fastest growing economy in this part of the world. We have implemented a lot of trade and investment, tax reforms, rice tariffication law that liberalized rice importation into the country for the first time. We are in the midst of our Build, which is an aggressive infrastructure development program that really catapulted the Philippine economy to where we were at the end of 2019 and even into the January and February of this year, prior to the immense impact of the COVID-19. Next chart, please. Even unemployment rate was at record low, reaching 5.3%, coming down from about 6.6%. Underemployment rate was also way below, from 20%, reaching a level of about 14%. And so these are historic low levels for this indicator. Next chart, please. Moving to inflation, after experiencing a high inflation rate in October of 2018, brought about by the high world oil prices, our inflation has really gone down to a level of 2.1. The last reading a month ago was 2.1%. So we were able to manage inflation, food prices, and a lot of essential goods prices. Next, please. Our Board of Investments, the country's lead investments and industry promotions agency, has reached also the 1 trillion pesos. It's about $22 billion in investment approvals in 2019. It is the highest ever in the agency's 52-year history. In fact, in the previous 2 years, it has been breaking records when it comes to approved investments, both in 2017 and in 2018 as well. Next, please. And just at the time when many economies have been experiencing contraction in their exports, the Philippines, in fact, has continued to sustain the positive growth in exports from 2019 and into January and February. In January, we even posted 9.4% growth and 2.8% in February. Next, please. So it was really just a couple of months ago, and a bit of nostalgic experience, really, if you think about it, that the Philippines was really running so fast. However, just like almost all parts of the world, we were hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, and March was the month when we started to implement a strict community quarantine. We called it the enhanced community quarantine. So the President Rodrigo Roa Duterte, on March 16, declared the emergency, state of emergency, as well as the enhanced community quarantine. So this is where we are now, or where we were back in March. Next, please. And this is the emergency phase. Immediately, for the part of the Department of Trade and Industry, we were tasked also to implement price freeze on all basic necessities, prime commodities. We implemented measures that will prevent hoarding, that will prevent panic buying, and really run a campaign together with the police and the National Bureau of Investigation to really run after those profiteers and hoarders. Next, please. The department has also recognized that since a lot of non-essential businesses have closed, we, however, made sure that the basic essential businesses will be kept open. And next, please, the industries. Next chart, please. The industries that were kept open because of the necessity would be the all the food and beverage. Beverage, of course, would be the non-alcoholic beverages, essential hygiene products, medicines and medical products, retail establishment that would sell and retail all these essential products, the logistics services that is needed along the supply chain, hospitals and medical clinics. Delivery service is one sector that really grew during the lockdown. Banks and capital markets, of course, the essentials, power and other utilities. And we kept the export sector and the BPO companies operating, given the importance that we put in those sectors for them to continue to deliver their commitments to the foreign market. Next, please. Okay, during the lockdown, we also made sure that cargo movement as well as movement of workers in permitted establishment shall continue and shall remain unhampered. And we also averted what was a looming port congestion by issuing certain administrative orders that will hasten the outflow or the pull-outs of containers from the ports. Next. Next, please. So in essence, these moves have averted any food shortage or essential product shortages. We were able to manage high capacity utilization, and that refers to production capacity. Initially, we tried to implement a skeleton workforce, but after a few weeks, elevated it to more than 50%, even reaching up to 100%. Just to make sure that there will be no food shortages, which is really an essential factor that would be needed in these situations. Raw material inventory has run up to even about 45 days and finished goods inventory to about 2 weeks. Next, please. Okay, and the country, the Congress and Senate have issued the Bayanihan to Heal as One Act. Bayanihan is some kind of a community cooperation, acting as one, and included herein are incentives as well being given to companies that will be manufacturing critical items such as the PPEs, the masks, medical devices, essential services, telecoms, and innovations. Next. So it's just for example, the companies that have participated would be multinationals that are operating in the country, and we have encouraged them to repurpose their manufacturing activities. For example, Medtex, Taiwanese-owned company with a capacity of about 15 million pieces of face masks a month. We allow them to continue to produce. In fact, they continued to export for the first few months, but we encourage them to supply also the requirements of the domestic economy. And other companies like Yoko Isada, EMS, electronic companies, New Kinpo Group, they are all operating in the country, and they were encouraged also to produce a face mask. Before, the Philippines, domestic production of face masks were only being done by Medtex and to a certain extent Yoko Isada. But now many companies have also been encouraged to produce face masks, including non-woven polypropylene materials, TACA, face masks, non-medical grade. These are the washable, reusable masks done by garment companies like Unisol down in Cebu, and Silver Dragon Resources. Next, please. There's also the Confederation of Wearables Exporters that these are mainly composed of garments and wearable exporters. They have repurposed, some of the companies have repurposed their production facilities to produce the coveralls, a main part of the PPEs. And they are now producing something like 10,000 coveralls per day, and have been selling to local hospitals as well as to a certain extent, especially at the start, to the government. Next, please. And other companies like Rockwell Collins from US, Dyson, IMI, they are now preparing to produce also ventilators. Next. Okay, just to cite that even during the height of the lockdowns, we made sure that the IT BPO industry, particularly the healthcare segment, was able to operate even at a high capacity of 90%. We made sure that their operations will be uninterrupted. This also showed that the following strengths of the local IT BPO industry must be sustained. So these are the resilience, flexibility, and stability. So the IT BPO, in fact, as well as the export industries, those located in the Philippine Economic Zone authorities, they were allowed to continue their operation to make sure that they supply their commitments to the foreign markets. Next. Okay. Now, we would say that the Philippines continue to attract investors. It's still the second fastest growing economy until the COVID-19, one of the fastest growing markets in the world. We boast of the highly capable and cost competitive talent pool, highly trainable, fluent in English, and a robust electronics and semiconductor industry, and a strong support industries, as well as free trade agreements and GSPs on key markets. We are also in the midst of passing reforms, especially in the tax reform, that will create a more attractive investment environment for investors. In particular, the CREATE, which is the acronym for the current tax reform, a tax reform that will bring down corporate income tax rate from 30% to 25%. We have also managed to propose a longer transition period for those enjoying incentives instead of 2 to 4 years, moving it from 4 to 9 years. And this is in following the principle of having time-bound performance-based incentives. And also a longer period for the net operating loss carryover of 5 years. We are still pursuing reforms in the retail trade to allow greater foreign equities in this sector, as well as in the public service or utilities, by amending these two acts, the Retail Trade Liberalization Act and the Public Service Act. And we are also amending the foreign investment negative list with the end in view of shortening the list and opening up more sectors for greater foreign equity participation. Next, please. Okay. The way we position the Philippines is to consider Philippines as a complementary host country in the manufacturing industry, especially those that are looking at diversifying their business locations to sustain and enhance competitiveness. Okay. And then also to continue to attract Chinese and foreign companies to pursue opportunities for expansion and diversification. Next, please. Okay, and this is a chart that will show the large pool of cost competitive and skilled labor. We churn out about 750,000 graduates per year. About 75,000 are in the engineering and science courses. Cost competitive skilled labor, highly trainable and technically capable labor force, where 72% of the population is fluent in English. They're multi-skilled, they're friendly, hospitable, and really relatively loyal to companies, so low attrition and turnover rate. Next. And the salary has been very competitive. We're somehow close to the where Vietnam is. Next, please. But in the Philippines, there is greater industrial peace. As you can see here, the number of strikes and lockouts, the gray row would show a relatively smaller number of strikes and lockouts compared to other countries in the region. Okay, next. We also boast of unrivaled access to key markets, recognizing that we have FTAs in ASEAN and enjoy, of course, FTAs with the ASEAN partners like Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, China, and India. We also have the GSP preference arrangements with the EU as well as with the US market, where a large percentage of our exports would enjoy duty-free access. Next, please. Okay. What we experience in this pandemic is that the unrestricted exports of critical products, as most countries adopted temporary export restrictions on certain products and categories of critical medical supplies in response to COVID-19. In the Philippines, we did not impose any export restrictions on these critical products. That just shows how we value business policies and consistency in those practices and the principle of fair play with respect to business. Next. Now, part of the economic stimulus to keep jobs and income strong is to provide bridge loans, soft loans, working capital loans, essentially for companies, both the micro SMEs as well as large companies. For the micro SMEs, we've prepared for a 1 billion peso fund to give them this, to lend them the bridge loans, some assistance when it comes to livelihood seeding, and also loans for the medium-sized enterprises. And in the Congress right now being discussed is additional funding for the micro SME sector. And we're working on a range of about 1 billion to 1.5 billion dollar funding for this purpose. And a lot of non-financial services that we have been doing and we will continue to pursue, especially on entrepreneurship education, educating them on e-commerce, financial advisory, on innovation and upskilling the workers, as well as in these particular times, allowing flexible work arrangements so that we can really keep, the companies can keep their workers and not retrench them. And we shall be hiring also workers for micro lending because this is a key activity at this point in time. Okay, next, please. Okay, so we mentioned the stimulus efforts, and these are contained in the Philippine Economic Stimulus Act, as well as the Corporate Recovery and Tax Incentives for Enterprises Act, or CREATE. And this is the tax reform I was explaining earlier. And I guess so we can skip this chart. I've explained this earlier. Okay, and we should continue to revitalize and enhance the competitiveness of the manufacturing and creative industry sector, knowing that these are sectors where Philippines has comparative advantage. We've identified sectors that the Philippines will continue to support. Next, please. And focus in driving investments in those identified key and strategic sectors. Some of these are relevant to the ongoing pandemic, like medical products and supplies, pharmaceuticals, and medical devices. So we shall continue also to promote the IT products, electronics manufacturing, and the IT BPM. Okay, next. So we would like to maximize also the potential of the digital economy by promoting e-commerce and digital technologies to a lot of the micro SMEs in the country, promoting as well financial inclusion in the trade, logistics, and operations. And this is where we do a lot of seminars and we do a lot of government assistance to the micro SMEs so that they can elevate their business models and enjoy the benefits of being part of the e-commerce sector and enlarging their business models as well. So all these, we use the whole of government approach. All agencies that can help, as well as private entities that are providing special packages for the micro SMEs. Okay, next. And then we continue to pursue the build that is also an employment generator and one that gives leads to faster growth in the economy, especially the construction services and government investments in this in the infrastructures for the first time under the Duterte administration. We've been, I mean, and the history of the Philippines, the Duterte administration has been investing heavily on infrastructure development. We're spending like 5 to 7% of GDP compared to about 2 to 3% in the previous administrations. So with this, we not only create jobs for the Philippine economy, we prepare for the future, the infrastructure requirements of the country nationwide. Next, please. And there is this recent survey done by the economists that shows how Philippines is able to manage key financial indicators like public debt, foreign debt management, and cost of borrowing capital. That shows that the Philippines ranks 6 in terms of fiscal management in the country. Next. Okay, so again, just to reiterate that and remembering where we were, growing, being the second fastest growing economy in ASEAN, and it is where we believe we can easily bounce back to once everything is settled. Hopefully, we can see and discover the vaccine and the medication that can hopefully address the issue of COVID-19. And that we can get back to the new normal. What we expect moving forward as well, whenever we talk of new normal, is the minimum health protocols that we institute to all businesses. And there are special protocols being developed, or that we have developed as well, and we continue to develop for the various sectors and industries, particular or special to their respective sectors. Next, please. So for the country, we will continue to be relentless in pursuing all the reforms that's needed, and all the economic policies that we need to implement so that we can make the Philippines a very attractive country to invest in, as we also try to address the current pandemic, and we believe that our country can heal as one. So with this, I end my presentation and would be welcoming questions on the floor. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Secretary Lopez, for such an insightful presentation. And now we move on to the question and answer program of our question and answer portion of our program. Secretary Lopez will be joined by Undersecretary and Managing Head of the Board of Investments, Dr. Seferino Rodolfo. I received a question here from my good friend in Washington, D.C., the Chairman, President, and CEO of the U.S. ASEAN Business Council, Alex Feldman. And he is thanking the Secretary and Ambassador Romualdez for this opportunity for U.S. businesses to hear directly from you. The Council supports the Philippines and would like to contribute to its economic recovery efforts. Now, the question is, could the Secretary give us any indication on the state of play of a potential U.S.-Philippines FTA? And as the Philippines map out its economic recovery strategies, including undertaking tax reform and rolling out stimulus packages, how does the country view its competitiveness vis-a-vis other ASEAN markets that are attracting more manufacturing opportunities?
Okay.
Good question.
All right. Okay. Thank you. So on the second question, basically, we've mentioned all these reforms that we are committed to continue, especially with respect to the liberalization of certain sectors that can open up more sectors for foreign equity participation. We are also liberalizing or adding more incentives. As you know, even in the tax reform, what has been oftenly reported outside is that we are cutting the incentives, we are removing incentives, but actually on the contrary, we are modernizing the incentives. We're even adding some other incentives when it comes to, let's say, computing for the lower corporate income tax rate. When when the company finishes the incentives, there will be a lot more deduction on the training and the development, deduction on domestic content, deduction on direct labor hires, deduction on additional deduction on infrastructure development around their plants, and many more. With respect to on the economic reforms, we will continue to work on the tax reform, as mentioned, the lowering of tax rate from 30% to 25% this year. And we hope to have this bill passed when Congress resumes around July. We were trying to hit the deadline last week, but it was really just, we were really short in terms of time. I understand that there might be special sessions in Congress for the Congress to be able to finalize this bill on the tax and investment reforms. One key provision also that is being highlighted is that for major investments, investments that will bring a lot of benefits for the country, the president will also be empowered to grant special types of investment incentives that will be meaningful for the investors. So investment incentives can also be now tailor-fitted to the investors, major investors coming in. And I'd like to thank again Alex and his team for continuing the support to the country among their peers. Thank you.
There is another question about the state of play of a potential U.S. Philippines FTA.
Oh yes. Okay. The Philippines continue to be committed to pursuing the FTA discussions. However, we also depend on the timing, I guess, and the moves from the U.S. side. Hopefully, from what we understood, the USTR will have to have an approval from the U.S. Congress, and I think that is what we're just waiting for. But from the Philippine side, we are ready to continue the discussion. Thank you.
And related to that question, we have a question from Mexico, from Mr. Union Ruiz. He's asking if there are plans for any bilateral or multilateral trade agreement with Mexico, similar to a U.S.-Mexico-Canada trade agreement.
Yes, I've talked to my counterpart in Mexico, the Minister of Trade, and have verbally proposed that hopefully we can start to explore the bilateral discussion and a potential FTA with Mexico, recognizing also that Mexico historically has been a strong trading partner of the Philippines, and hopefully that is something that we can also start to do moving forward.
Sir?
There is
STR Nini, if I may just also supplement what the Secretary mentioned. There is also discussions on in relation to what the Secretary mentioned. Of course, the FTA would be at the one end of the spectrum, but we normally start with a joint economic commission. This is more of the more collaborative and partnership-based discussions rather than as we move forward towards a negotiation-based discussion. But that has been on the table, and we are just waiting for, as the Secretary mentioned, We are just waiting for a reply from the Mexican side on the draft JEC agreement that we have proposed to Mexico. So thank you.
Well, before I end that question, the US-ASEAN Business Council also has reiterated its offer to have a dialogue on issues relating to a potential US-Philippine FTA. And they're hoping that they could call on the secretary in person or a video conference during the 2020 Philippine Business Mission in September. And the Board of Investment welcomes such interest from the US-ASEAN Business Council, and they would like to engage the council for the schedule of such a video conference. And now I proceed to the next question. Your government's infrastructure development program, Build program, has put forth ambitious projects all designed to plug in gaps, among others, in our logistic support system. Can you cite, Mr. Secretary, major accomplishments to date with regards to the program that in your assessment will benefit prospective investors in the Philippines?
Yes, I'll be able to do that. Off the top of my head, I can remember a lot of projects that were completed recently, road projects that will bypass a major city like Manila from the port to the northern part of the country. So there are highways that have been inaugurated. In other words, they were finished and are now being operated. Airports that were reopened after improving their facilities, upgrading their facilities. A lot of airports are also being constructed right now. Bridges that are, of course, providing ease in the movement of cargoes, especially from one part of the city to the other. So bridges and roads are being constructed, and seaports as well. These are infrastructure that will really help us also lower the logistics costs, which, as you know, has been also a challenge in the country, in a country that is archipelagic in nature, in its geographic factors. So we therefore have to improve a lot of these logistics projects, logistics-related infrastructure projects. And so a lot have been finished, but a lot of have been really ongoing, and many of these will be finished. The idea is to finish most of this before the end of the term of President Duterte.
Okay.
Mr. Arnini, sorry,
Yes,
just quickly to add to what the Secretary also mentioned, a very clear example, for instance, the Secretary has advocated throughout this lockdown for a resumption of the construction projects for this infrastructure. So that has already been in place. I think a month ago, the IATF, which the Secretary is a member of, has already resumed and has taken advantage of the lull in the famous traffic in Metro Manila to continue on with the project. So for instance, if you're going, Alex, for instance, if you're going to DTI from BGC, there is ongoing infrastructure project, the linking of BGC, that's the Bonifacio Global City, to another CBD, that's Ortigas. So that bridge crossing the Pasig River would be a tremendous impact on lessening the traffic in Metro Manila. Plus the Secretary, as chair of the Board of Investments, he chaired a meeting of the BOI last week, where we also approved one of the biggest infrastructure projects in the Philippines ever. It's just that this could have been approved a month ago, except that the Secretary wanted really to make sure that the proponents continue to be committed to this big infrastructure project somewhere north of Manila that would really help in terms of positioning the Philippines for more tourism and international travel. So that has since been approved by the BOI, given a written commitment from the proponent that they see really good value moving forward with this project, and that they see in the medium term to the long term, they remain confident on the prospects of the Philippine economy. So thank you.
Yeah, Nini also. Actually, if you're familiar, for those familiar with the Philippines, especially Metro Manila, traversing from north to south and vice versa would probably take you 2.5 hours to sometimes 3 hours in worst case. So there is this connector road that is expected to be finished by December. And then that will, from the 2 to 2.5 hours, it will now be about 30 minutes or even less for one to traverse north to south, south to north of Manila. So you will be bypassing the main thoroughfare, which is called EDSA. So that would be a big boost as well to the local travels. And adjacent roads connecting Manila to north, meaning to Clark to Subic, as well as down south, Cavite to Quezon, Cavite to Bicol. There are these roads as well as railway projects that are now ongoing and hopefully to be finished in 2 years.
Just another one added information. Just this morning, for instance, you would have read in the media reports that the TPLEX, that's the Tarlac Pangasinan La Union Expressway, will be opening the last segment of the TPLEX tollway. This actually cuts short the travel time between the end of Manila all the way to La Union from a previous time of 3 hours to now just less than 1 hour. It's very significant because it also allows us to push or to extend our industrialization more out of the region 4A, because as you may well know, industrialization has been clustered mainly in the south of south of Luzon, that's Cavite, Laguna, Batangas. But now we can move it already to the north of Luzon. Very important because, for instance, your colleague from Japan, there's just a big company that's producing wiring harness. They actually have chosen north of Luzon, a province called Pangasinan, for the site for their wiring harness plant that would be needing about 10,000 workers. So this relocation of a Japanese company from another country where they have the factory now will continue on even after this pandemic, based on our discussions with this company. So thank you.
So this is in effect answers the question of one of our audience, Mr. Colorina from Washington, D.C., with respect to supply chain. But are there any other supply chain issues that the government is addressing besides infrastructure?
Well, beside infrastructure, well, practically it's really all those infrastructures that we mentioned. I think I mentioned also some ports for the roll-on, roll-off way of transporting goods. So that's also being given an extra push. We are also providing nitrated capacity to some exports, so that to some airports, so that it can also extend the travel even during the evening, especially in those provinces where airports are not ready for evening flights. So actually there's over like 20,000 projects when you talk of infrastructure, and we're just mentioning a couple of flagship projects, but there are a lot ongoing right now. As mentioned, we're spending for the first time 5%. In fact, even during the lockdown, as mentioned, we were able to start early in bringing back some of the build projects to take advantage of the lockdown. And really, of course, with all these health protocols and being careful, especially with the workers and housing the workers, and all the health precautionary measures in place. But certainly infrastructure was given an extra push, recognizing as well that workers in the construction field, they account for about 10% of the workforce. So it was also given an extra priority and early start, while other businesses are not yet operating. By the way, when we talk of the lockdowns, only about at the height of the lockdown, the enhanced community quarantine, 50% were still allowed to, 50% of the sectors were still allowed to operate because these were considered essential. There's the balance 50%, but towards the lighter lockdown, like modified ECQ, as well as where we are right now, the general community quarantine, practically all businesses are open. About 94% would be operating by now as of today. So we're a country that we were quite careful. We declared the lockdown. The president declared the lockdown quite early, so because of our fear that the health sector might be overwhelmed with COVID cases, and with that we can say that our lockdowns have been pretty successful. We were able to flatten the curve now, and also there's already an excess reserve, a healthy reserve of I think 60% when it comes to isolation units, hospital beds, ICU beds available. The death rate has been limited to about a 7-day moving average of about 1.6. It was about 30 deaths per day. And of course, the positivity rate has been going down as well. So we're looking forward to also further de-escalation. In other words, moving to a lighter lockdown, hopefully by the middle of this month to the end of this month, June, from general community quarantine to a modified DCQ, which is a step closer to the normal. So with that means that even the balance 6% that's not permitted to operate during this time, and I'm referring basically to leisure activities, those that would have mass congregation, entertainment, movie theaters, concerts, etc. Those are still not allowed now, but in the modified GCQs, all these not permitted sectors will now also be open at 50% capacity. So that means that basically the entire sector, all the sectors will be open by then. Thank you.
We just learned that the credit rating agency Standard & Poor has maintained a BBB+ rating for the Philippines despite COVID-19, with the agency expecting a strong comeback for the country in 2021. Given all the positive initiatives and reforms you stated, Mr. Secretary, what do you think is the single most important competitive advantage that the Philippines can and will offer to foreign investors vis-a-vis our neighbors in ASEAN and the rest of Asia?
The best advantage often will always be the people that companies will work with, the multinationals will work with. Our breed, I must say, is a different kind. Educated. What sounds to be the usual benefits are actually, when you talk to investors, these are the often repeated things that they like to, factors that they'd like to cite when they work with the Filipinos. They can be highly skilled, they can be, managerial, they're very adaptable, trainable, nice to work with, good, positive working attitude. They always find solutions. They are relatively loyal. They don't transfer from one company to another. And of course, aside from that, of course, they're educated and can be trained fast. And English as a medium is really very, very easy for these people. There is also a rich pool, a talent pool, so that's also an advantage, whether that is a skilled labor or a managerial level. So. I must say that will continue to be the advantage of Philippines. Of course, we just have to provide the other important factors, as mentioned, the economic environment policies that will attract more, investors in the country.
Well, we are running out of time. Actually, we are 15 minutes over our time limit. There are so many questions that have come in. We will have the chance to answer them later. But there's one room for one question, and this is very important. Development of the micro, small, and medium enterprise and inclusive growth of the economy have been the major pillars of the Duterte administration's governance policy. As a senior member of the administration's economic team, where in your assessment is the Philippines right now with regards to achieving these two goals, which are really very important for the Philippines to be viewed as a place to do business?
Yeah, hello.
Yes.
Okay, the micro SME sector is certainly a major part of the Philippine economy. They contribute 70% of employment, and by sheer number, they are 99.4% of the total number of enterprises. Their increased contribution can be cited from what used to be about 32 to 35. They are now running up to 38 to 40% as contribution. There's a lot of micro enterprises. Frankly, there would be around 5 to 6 million, but many of these are unregistered. Only 1 million would be registered. But during the Duterte administration, we're happy to note that from what used to be about 900,000 for so many years in terms of number of registered enterprises, this number has gone up now to about 1.5 million. That means that a lot of those in the informal sector have started to join the formal sector. They registered their business and they're employing more people. That's part of the reason why we've reported earlier the strong unemployment number of about 5%. And I guess at the bottom line in all this is that during the Duterte administration, the last report in terms of poverty incidence, it has been brought down. I'm trying to recall the number from our target is about 14% by 2022. And we were able to reach already about 15% of poverty. It has gone down from about 22% when we started in 2016. So a lot of these positive indicators, to us, what matters most would be the reduction in poverty incidence, and that means uplifting the lives of many more Filipinos out of poverty. So that is the key goal. And of course, all this economic growth would be more meaningful if we are able to address this. And again, we thank the foreign business communities and the investors who have continued to show confidence in the Philippine economy. We were there, 6% growth. Definitely, we will bounce back even to higher growth, especially by 2021. 2020, as in many countries, I guess this is really a challenging year, but you can count on us. A much faster growth estimate would be about 9% by 2021. So as the economy will definitely bounce back because we were there before.
Well, one last question. When will the CREATE law be enacted? And while it is pending, what incentives are there available for companies that are looking to diversify their investments in the Philippines?
Yes. So the current incentives are still here being offered, but the CREATE law hopefully will get to be passed the middle of this year when the Congress resumes their session. It is the version. The reason why we're confident, it is a version far better than the original draft. The regional draft, as you may have heard, a lot of current investors, foreign companies have, they're all worried, especially during the first version. But it has gone into so many iterations, and the current version definitely is a much better, more acceptable version, and then fair to everyone, whether you're a new investor or even the existing ones. It's crafted in a way that it will have longer transition period, a faster reduction in corporate income tax rate, again from 30% to 25% for this year, effective this year, and of course tailor fitting of some incentives as necessary to the major investors that will yield extraordinary benefits for the Philippines. So this is definitely a version that we are all trying to push.
Well, as we end this seminar, I would like to recognize the DTI's Philippine Trade and Investment Centers in the US, Canada, and Mexico, my esteemed colleagues and our dedicated staff. We would endeavor to answer all your questions. Unfortunately, we run out of time. And if you also have further questions, please do not hesitate to email our PTICs or trade and investment centers near you. Thank you very much for making time and joining us today. You each will be receiving a survey form. Please fill them up. It wouldn't take a minute. And in exchange, you will be receiving a copy of Secretary Lopez's presentation deck. Last but not least, we give special thanks to our partners, the Philippine embassies and consulates general, the Board of Investments headed by Undersecretary Dr. Seferino Rodolfo, Governor Angie Cayas and staff, of course, our host and producer, Executive Director Maggie Misolas Ashley, and our indefatigable FTSC team back home. Special mention goes to Luis Quinones. Thank you very much, everybody. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening.